We in the G5 high, buzzing loud, we thrive. Underdogs rising up, taking shots, we alive. From the mountains to the coast, we gon' bring that fire. In the heart of college football, we the ones they admire. Yo, it's game day, stadium packed, feel that rush. From Boise to App State, man, we never hush. Rocking the colors, yeah, we bleed that pride. Cinderella stories, watch our dreams collide. Late nights, bright lights, we grind every play. Underrated talent, we gon' make them say, who's that team when we come to town? Representing for the schools that wear the crown. We in the G5 high, buzzing loud, we thrive. Underdogs rising up, taking shots, we alive. From the mountains to the coast, we gon' bring that fire. In the heart of college football, we the ones they admire. Yo, it's game day, stadium packed, feel that rush. From Boise to App State, man, we never hush. Rocking the colors, yeah, we bleed that pride. Cinderella stories, watch our dreams collide. Late nights, bright lights, we grind every play. Underrated talent, we gon' make them say, who's that team when we come to town? Representing for the schools that wear the crown. We in the G5 high, buzzing loud, we thrive. Underdogs rising up, taking shots, we alive. From the mountains to the coast, we gon' bring that fire. In the heart of college football, we the ones they admire. We the ones they are. The ones they can't skip.
Here's Navarro on the run. Navarro's going to keep it. Navarro for 6! Touchdown, Bobcats!
I feel I had a hard time staying in my own lane.
Oh my goodness! Brett Murdoch! Pick 6! Harvath inside the 30, the 20. Blake Harvath will score! And Mendoza takes a big hit. He never saw it coming. Trey White got in there. There's his man, Rucker. And nobody's going to catch him. Goodbye. Intercepted. Skipper, touchdown!
Telly again, why not? A step forward and make it 2 for Telly!
Quarterback keeper, showing off the speed, steps on the gas, untouched!
The G5 Hive. All G5, all the time.
Welcome to the G5 Hive Live, where we're excited to bring you the G5 college football coverage you love each and every week. I am Luke, and I'm joined by my co-host, Justice. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're watching us on X, please give us a follow, a like, and a retweet. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, please rate and review. The G5 Hive merchandise store is now live. Link in the YouTube video comments, as well as pinned to our X page. And here at the bottom of the screen, Justice. One-armed man.
Yeah, you can't really see, but yeah.
One-armed
yeah, man. I'm a one-armed man for a couple weeks. I had shoulder surgery last Wednesday, and I will be in a sling for the next 6 weeks. And my orders are very strict. I am not allowed to use my right hand to do anything. So it's a little. I found that out today. It's a little disappointing because that was not what the thought was before surgery. But when they went in and did so, they knew I had a torn rotator cuff and a bone spur. When they went in and did the surgery, they found an issue with my bicep. And they had to fix that. And because of that issue, means I'm not allowed to use my right hand to literally do anything. The can't type, can't grab something, can't use a mouse. Yeah, so that kind of sucks.
Well, you know
no wait for 3 months. So it'd be 3 months before I'm allowed to pick up anything with that hand.
Well, you know what's going to make you feel a little bit better? That's tonight, the G5 Hive. We're diving into the MAC. We're going to go over some coaching changes. We're going to go over players coming and going. But first, what the Swarm needs to know is news and notes, Justice.
Yeah, not a whole lot going on. Spring practice started. Liberty and Hawaii are both in the middle of spring practice, but some other schools announced their intentions this week. UMass will start spring practice on March 10th with their spring game / event, whatever they're having, on April 19th. Miami of the MAC, the Miami Redhawks, will start spring practice March 15th with their game on April 26th. Jacksonville State from Conference USA has their spring game for April 17th. Florida International from Conference USA starts spring practice March 4th, so next week. Spring game set for April 5th. And what seems to kind of be a trend this year, North Texas will forego a spring game. I think that, I mean, like, people make a big deal about it. I don't know if they're going to have they're just not going to have anything, or they're just going to have more like an event more so than a game. I feel like most teams, that's kind of what they do now anyways. It's not really a game per se. It's more of a spring showcase, spring event, basically a glorified practice. Let the fans come out, see what's going on, and they run some set plays, that sort of thing. I think Ole Miss even had a hot dog eating contest last year as part of their spring showcase. So I wonder if more teams will kind of lean into that aspect of it, make it more of a fan, kind of event, more so, about getting the fans out there than it is about really a football game per se. UTEP has hired Bobby Daly as their new defensive coordinator. He comes to UTEP from Montana State. Bowling Green has hired Miami Hurricanes wide receiver analyst David Cooney to be their new wide receiver coach. North Texas assigned defensive coordinator Skylar Cassidy to a 2-year deal. And that's kind of, I mean, that's kind of unusual, right? I mean, a lot of times I don't know that you see OCs and DCs more than 2 years, but the reason why I think that one in particular is unusual is because I think this is it for Eric Morris, right? It's just do or die. So I don't know that a 2-year deal. I mean, I guess it's good if Eric Morris and things get turned around and Eric Morris returns to North Texas, right? Then that ensures Skylar Cassidy at least has a job next year. But knowing that this is a do or die year, I feel like for Eric Morris, just seems, I don't know, a little bit strange that that this would happen, but I guess not too bad. Skylar comes over from Sam Houston. Sam Houston was one of the best defenses in the G5 last year, so hopefully he can get things turned around in North Texas. And East Carolina extends offensive coordinator John David Baker. No shock there. I think his name had been thrown around for some P4 stuff, and I think they were just trying to kind of up the ante, so to speak, to keep him at ECU. And if someone does come calling, make them pay a little bit more, or maybe delay it for another year before he gets the big time offer. So
they had tough cooking there at the end of the year with that back half. So I'll be excited to see what ECU is able to do here in 2025.
Yeah, me too. And keeping John David Baker is a good thing for them. They'll keep the P4s at bay for at least another year, perhaps.
Well, should we get into the good stuff? What people are here for, and that is the transfer portal, Mid-American Conference, the MAC. Let's get it started with the Akron Zips. They're 4-8 last season, but coaching changes, don't have any. Joe Moorhead going into his 4th season as head coach. I'll also say he's going into his 3rd season as the OC. He didn't call plays in 2023. Billy Fessler did. I assume when you're going through all the coaching stuff, sometimes they don't have a DC listed, sometimes they don't have an OC, so that's when I kind of make the assumption head coach is making calls on those sides of the ball. So, and then Tim Tibesar will be going in his 4th season there as defensive coordinator.
Player-wise, they lose wide receiver Bobby Golden to Louisville, linebacker Antavius Fish to Sam Houston, running back Jordan Simmons to Ole Miss, edge CJ Nunnally IV to Purdue, linebacker Brian McCoy, who was an all-conference linebacker, to Oklahoma State. Wide receiver Adrian Norton is still in the transfer portal, as is running back Charles Kellum. They bring in wide receiver Brandon Hills Jr. from Washington State, wide receiver Tim Greer Jr. from Fresno State, edge Cyrus Durham from Arizona, running back Chris Gee from Colgate, and running back Jordan Gant comes over from Tennessee State. As far as players out of eligibility, really no one on offense. You have to bear with me trying to run a mouse with my left hand here. Offensively, really no one of consequence, and the same defensively. I don't really see anyone of major consequence that they're losing. But they lose some key pieces. I think CJ Nunnally and Brian McCoy are big losses for that defense that they'll have to replace. And then obviously losing both Bobby Golden and Adrian Norton. Guess it's possible Adrian Norton can still return. He's in the transfer portal. He's probably one of the players I'm shocked still in the portal. Pretty good receiver for Akron a year ago. I'm surprised he has not landed somewhere else. Great in the slot. Had a really productive year a year ago. I think he was all MAC performer for us at the G5 Hive. So a little surprised he hasn't landed somewhere. But they do return Ben Finley, quarterback. So that does give them some stability there. They'll just need some new receivers to pop up or to step up, and maybe it'll be Tim Greer or Israel Polk, who returns, a redshirt freshman, and then Alex Adams, who was injured, I believe, a year ago, also returns. So it'll be interesting to kind of see who steps up in that wide receiver room with the absence of Adrian Norton and Bobby Golden. It's definitely something to kind of pay attention to in the spring. And then on the defensive end, the edge and the middle linebacker positions, I think, are the ones where they're going to feel the losses the most.
And from a 2025 standpoint, Israel Polk, I'm excited about. I liked him when he was at Pitt. Popped off in their spring game. But for a 2025 outlook, I see something similar to another 4-8 type season. I don't see any big strides. I don't think for this year. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that they have the pieces to do. I mean, maybe they get to 6 wins. That wouldn't shock me, but I wouldn't necessarily expect a whole lot more than that. I mean, the fact that Finley returns is huge for the offense and some stability there, but I don't know that they have a lot of talent elsewhere on that roster. Like you said, I think Israel Polk's interesting. If someone told me, hey, you got to pick one guy from Akron in 2025 in the wide receiver room, who you pick, and I think Polk is who I would probably pick. But I think Alex Adams returning, who was productive in 2023, if he's healthy and able to return to form, he could be a difference maker for that wide receiver room as well. And maybe one of the transfers, whether it's Tim Greer Jr. or Brandon Hills coming over from Washington State and Fresno State, maybe one of those guys can step up as well.
All right, well, let's move over to the Ball State Cardinals, who were 3-9 last season. There's a head coaching change, and that is Mike Grmievich. He was the head coach at Butler in 2022 through 2024. He had 3 winning consecutive seasons at Butler. First time that had been done since 1987 through 1989. In 2024, they averaged 35.6 points per game and 407.8 yards per game. He was an OC for Temple in 2019 through 2021 and at NIU for 2016 through 2018. Again, on their website, I did not see anything around an offensive coordinator, so I assume he will also be making those calls on the offensive side of the ball. And defensive coordinator Jeff Knowles will be in his third season. He came from Butler and was with Coach Urimovich, DC, his first season at Butler. So there's a connection there.
Player-wise, they lose wide receiver Malcolm Gilley to Coastal Carolina, quarterback Caden Simmons to Tulane, offensive tackle Arkil Anugwam to Alabama, running back Von Pemberton to Boston College, cornerback Miles Norwood to South Carolina, wide receiver Justin Bowick to Illinois, wide receiver Cam Pickett to Kansas, tight end Tanner Koziol to Wisconsin, and offensive tackle Teron Tayo to Cincinnati. They bring in safety Avery Stewart from Kentucky, running back Elijah Jackson from Purdue, quarterback Walter Taylor III from Colorado, edge Nathan Voorhees from Bryant, wide receiver Eric Weatherly from Bucknell, running back Quay Ashley from Kennesaw State, and cornerback Roman Pearson comes over from Bucknell. In terms of players out of eligibility, there's really no one on offense of much significance. Defensively, they lose defensive lineman Riley Tolsma and defensive back George Udo. So their losses are all basically transfer portal, and they pretty much lose the entire offense. Other than offensive linemen, and they lose some offensive linemen as well. They believe they lose two of them. Quarterback gone, all three starting receivers are gone, running backs gone, and tight end. So it's going to be a whole brand new offense. I do, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, Luke, but I recall reading something or seeing something that Cale Kelly is back and he's going to be playing quarterback. Which is interesting, right? Because he played quarterback for him.
I feel like he transferred to a different school in the MAC.
Maybe. I thought I read something that he was coming back and they were planning on using him at quarterback, which I thought was interesting because he's not. He's a dual threat guy. He's much more. He's a much better quarterback with his legs than he is passing the ball, which I thought might be a little bit interesting, given the offense.
He is on the spring roster
that they want to run. And so, if he's coming and he's playing quarterback, this offense is going to look very different than it did a year ago. I mean, he played quarterback for him in 2023, so don't expect there to be if he's going to play quarterback. Don't expect a lot of passing production for the receivers and tight ends like we saw a year ago at Ball State. This team I have pretty low expectations for. I don't know, 2 or 3 wins maybe. Just don't think the talent's there this year, and I'm not sure that they. Especially if Kelly's going to be their quarterback, I'm definitely out on the Cardinals in 2025.
How do you think he can perform as a quarterback for that team? Like, because obviously he's going to be a rushing threat. He's a very athletic guy. Do you think he'll be able to do enough to put up stats wise himself?
I don't think so, because I just don't think he is a proficient enough passer that it's going to be able to make much of a difference. I mean, if he's going to be the quarterback, teams are going to stack the box, force him to beat him with the pass, and I just don't think they're going to be able to do it. And so, talent-wise, they're definitely not as good as they were last year, and record-wise, they weren't very good last year. And so I don't see how this situation improves, at least in the near future in 2025.
All right. Well, let's move over to the Bowling Green Falcons, who are 7-6 last season. Coaching changes, there's none. Head coach Scott Leffler comes back for his 7th season. I found this interesting. He's 27-41. So he's going into his 7th season, but has a losing record, which is amazing. But he's been bowl eligible the last 3, and during that time he's gone 20-19. So he's really had a really good last 3 years. So, but that was just kind of interesting in going through these head coaching and offensive defensive coordinators. OC, there's co-OCs both entering their 4th season, Max Warner and Greg Nosel. Defensive coordinators, again, co-defensive coordinators, both going into their 3rd season, Steve Morrison and Sammy Lawson.
Personnel-wise, in the transfer portal, they lose defensive lineman Devontae Miles to South Carolina, quarterback Camden Orth to Chattanooga, offensive tackle Alex Walschliger to Kentucky, running back Tyrion Stewart to Virginia Tech, and linebacker Joseph Sipp Jr. off to Kansas. They bring in tight end Arliss Boardingham from Florida, cornerback JoJo Johnson from Indiana, quarterback Justin Lamson from Stanford, edge Collins Echamapong from UCLA, cornerback Jordan Dunbar from Kansas State, and linebacker Gideon Lampron from Dayton. In terms of players they lose out of eligibility, quarterback Connor Bazelak's out of eligibility. They lose All-America tight end and NFL draft pick Harold Fannin Jr. off to the NFL, as well as running back Jason Patterson also out of eligibility. On the defensive side of things, I got to get better with my left hand on this mouse. Linebacker Demetrius Hardiman is out of eligibility, and cornerback Jordan Oladokin is off to the NFL.
He was good for them last year.
He was really good.
I think he was my player of the week once or twice this last season.
Yeah, that's probably their biggest loss on defense. Maybe Anthony Hawkins too, who's also out of eligibility. Those two guys, probably their 2 biggest losses on defense. Losing Harold Fannin Jr. is going to hurt, but they bring in Arliss Boardingham, who I think should be fine for the MAC. Do I expect him to be Harold Fannin Jr.? Absolutely not. But I think he probably will end up being the leading receiver, for the Bowling Green Falcons. They use the tight ends a lot. I mean, I could see him 400 to 500 yards.
I really like Justin Lamson coming over. He was at Syracuse, I believe, and then went to Stanford and then comes over just because of how much he runs. Like, I think he can keep this Bowling Green team in that probably 5 to 7. I don't think they get more than 7 wins this year. I haven't looked at their schedule, but I feel like they're in that 5 to 7. And I think Coach Leffler would love to get another bowl eligibility for the 4th season in a row. But
yeah, I like the Syracuse Justin Lamson more than the Stanford Justin Lamson. I thought he looked really good at Syracuse. At Stanford, I thought he looked really bad. And so it'd be interesting to see which version we get here at Bowling Green. I tend to agree with you. I think they probably get 7, 8 wins, maybe 8 wins. I think I don't know that they're not like a top tier MAC team, but they're probably in that second. I would say second tier group of MAC teams. I don't know that I would expect them to really compete for a title. But but I think, they're probably somewhere between, I don't know, they feel like maybe fourth in the MAC, fifth in the MAC, something like that.
Well, let's move over to a team that we think could compete in the MAC, and that's the Buffalo Bulls, 9-4 last season. Coaching changes, we have none. Head coach Pete Lembo comes back for his second season. Again, if you're unfamiliar with him, he was at South Carolina as assistant head coach and special teams coach 2021 through 2023. Offensive coordinator Dave Patnod comes back for his second season to be the OC. He was an analyst at Virginia in 2023. And then DC Joe Bowen comes back for his second season. And prior to being there at Buffalo, he was the Miami, Ohio linebacking coach and run game coordinator in 2022 and 2023.
One piece of coaching news, I guess, for them that's kind of interesting. I think he's their QB coach. And someone else pointed. Shout out to Mike Langston who pointed this out to me earlier today. But like their quarterback coach Ron Whitcomb, supposedly was going to be hired by Norfolk State to be their new OC. Michael Vick was recorded on a podcast last week saying it wasn't a done deal yet, but that Ron Whitcomb was going to be the next OC at Norfolk State. But then Ron Whitcomb tweeted something out today about being at Buffalo, and so I don't know, maybe that all fell through, but I don't know, just something interesting, I guess, to kind of pay attention to, see if they do end up losing their quarterbacks coach there to Norfolk State. But speaking of quarterbacks, personnel-wise, they lose quarterback CJ Agbana, who has declared for the NFL draft. Kicker Upton Belafont transferred to Texas Tech, and they also lose unanimous All-American linebacker Sean Dolak, who got snubbed by the combine, but I personally expect him to be drafted by the NFL. So who do they bring in? They bring in quarterback Taquan Roberson from Kansas State, formerly of Penn State, linebacker Mitchell Gonzer from Harvard, cornerback Keontez Bradley from Arizona State, and linebacker Connor Henderson from North Texas. That Roberson, addition is kind of interesting, right? He's a dual threat guy. When he's had his chances, again, he hasn't been much of a passer either. But that was kind of CJ Agbana before this past season, right? Like that was kind of the book on him. Was like, hey, great with his legs, can't pass a lick. They were able to get things figured out with CJ Agbana. Had a good season a year ago, so maybe they will be able to do the same for Taquan Roberson coming over from Kansas State. Other than they don't really lose anyone else of consequence on offense. They lose a couple receivers that are out of eligibility and Tajee Johnson and J.J. Jenkins, but they return Victor Snow. They return Nick McMillan, who was injured at the end of last year. Hopefully he can stay healthy for once. And they return running back Aljay Henderson, one of the best running backs in all of the G5, had a outstanding end into the 2024 season, and he should probably should kind of pick up where he left off. Their backup quarterback returns and Jack Shields. I think a lot of the defensively they return Red Murdoch, who was the nation's second leading tackler, only second to his own teammate and Sean Dolak. The top two tacklers in all the nation were on the same team, which is quite unusual. They also lose Marcus Fuqua, safety, out of eligibility on defense. But I think if they are able to get competent quarterback play out of Taquan Roberson, then I think this team compete for a MAC title. I think it's probably the biggest question mark. Victor Snow's great. He was a walk-on a year ago, earned a scholarship, had a great season. Alj is great as well. I think defensively they'll be just fine. They'll get someone to kind of replace Sean Dolak, but returning Red Murdoch in the middle of that defense is huge. And again, just a big question for me is the quarterback play. Can they get out of Taquan Roberson what they got out of CJ Agbana? And if they can, then they should be competing for a MAC title.
And I believe they will be competing for a MAC title in 2025. Let's move over to the Central Michigan Chippewas, who were 4-8 last season. Coaching changes, we got them all. Head coaching change, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, head coach. Matt Drinkall spent the last 6 years as an assistant coach, offensive line, and co-OC on Jeff Monken's staff at Army. Co-OC Jim Chapin spent the last 3 seasons as the OC and quarterback coach at Eastern Washington. In 2024, Eastern Washington averaged 442 yards per game and 35.8 points per game. Injuries to the wide receivers caused the team to shift to a run-focused approach, and the team averaged 229 yards per game rushing. He also brings in co-OC Derek Fulton, who spent the last 6 seasons as the OC at NAIA Grandview University in Des Moines, Iowa. Shout out, only about 15-20 minutes from my childhood home. In his time there, he went 72-5 in 6 seasons. His 2024 team had over 3,000-yard rushing and 42 rushing touchdowns. In their NAIA championship game, they had 353 yards on the ground and 132 yards via the air in their 35-7 win. Defensive coordinator Sean Crowan comes in via Army, where he was the defensive line coach for the past 3 seasons. Prior to that, he was at Colorado State as the linebacking coach in 2020 and 2021. So we've got a guy coming from the Army system. They've got one coach that knows how to pass the ball, but can also shift on a dime. And then you've got Derek Fulton coming in, who likes to run the ball from Grandview. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Central Michigan is going to want to run the ball in 2025.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to kind of see what that offense looks like, right? Because, like you said, they bring in the OC from Eastern Washington, who, if there are no injuries, they slung the ball around a lot. But you bring in, two guys, a guy from Army, a guy from the NAIA who like to run the ball. I don't know, like, are we going to get the triple option, or are we going to get some elements of triple option? I don't know. I haven't really dug deep into like what their focus will be, but it's definitely something that we'll need to dig in more on this offseason to kind of see what we should expect from this offense. I tend to agree with you, Luke. I think it's going to be a very run-heavy offense. Maybe not triple option run offense, but I think nonetheless it'll be a run-heavy offense. Personnel-wise, they lose wide receiver Evan Boyd to Michigan State, linebacker Nolan Ziegler to Ferris State, quarterback Bert Emanuel Jr. to San Diego State, quarterback Tyler Jefferson to Florida A&M, defensive tackle Jonah Pace to Iowa. They bring in tight end Rusty Van Wetzinga IV from Iowa, running back Trey Corners from Tulane, and quarterback Angel Flores from Northern Arizona. As far as losses go, the biggest one is probably that one on defense, losing Jonah Pace. That one's going to hurt. They also lose running back Marion Lukes, who's out of eligibility. Other than that, they don't lose too much else on offense. Defensively, like I said, they lose Jonah Pace, who transferred out. They lose linebacker Justin Whiteside and cornerback Dante Kent out of eligibility. I think they do return quarterback Joey Levis, who started the year as the quarterback. He entered the portal, then withdrew from the portal, so he's going to be returning. I don't have high expectations for Central Michigan in 2025. They weren't a great team in 2024. I don't know that they'll be a great team in 2025. It almost makes me wonder, like, if they don't try to do something to kind of to neutralize that talent gap and do, run like a triple option, right? Or some elements of a triple option that would help them kind of, neutralize maybe some talent gap in year one, what they have versus what the rest of the MAC has. I don't know, but I don't have high hopes for them.
I mean, call me crazy, but I kind of like what we saw at was Glasser last season, and just running the ball and what this offense could look like. It's got me intrigued.
Yeah, I mean, Glasser came in; he's a true freshman. Well, I don't know. Will they hand the ball to give him the ball? I don't know. Will they go with someone with more experience and Joey Labas or the kid from Northern Arizona? Yeah, I don't know. Those are all good questions. I think, I do think they plan to run the ball, and maybe that bodes well for Glasser, right? I don't know anything about the kid from Northern Arizona. Glasser is definitely a more mobile option than Joey Labas. So,
All right. Well, let's move over to the other directional school in Michigan, and that's the Eastern Michigan Eagles. They were 5-7 last season. Coaching changes, we've got none. Head coach Chris Creighton comes back for his 12th season. Honestly, quick side note, these coaches in the MAC, there are some coaches that have been around for a while, which is just amazing to see in the landscape of college football, and how they're all just seem to be in the MAC. Anyways, offensive coordinator Mike Piakowski in his 3rd season, and defensive coordinator Ben Needham in his 3rd season.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We were talking, I guess, off the record earlier last week, and you were mentioning about the coaching tenure in the MAC, right? It'll be interesting to see, like, if they have a lot of turnover next year, if things don't go as teams hope. We'll see. Chris Creighton certainly feels like one of those guys, like, his seat's probably pretty warm. And
if people don't remember, right, there was that end of the right. Was that with the fight at the end in the bowl game 2 years ago?
That was 2 years ago. Yeah,
2 years ago, and then there were some stipulations I think put into his contract where really had to hammer down on things at the end of the game of getting players off the field and making sure everyone got off safely, stuff like that. But that was quite the sight at the end of the 2 years ago.
I don't know that this year is like going to be a good year for Chris Creighton. So I don't know that Chris Creighton will survive 2025. Player wise, they lose wide receiver Marcus Allen to Mississippi State, linebacker James Jonkum over to Virginia Tech, edge Joey Zielinski to Pittsburgh, quarterback Drew Viato to Missouri State, offensive lineman Carson Lee to Mississippi State, wide receiver Orrin Singleton to West Virginia, cornerback Daquan White to Georgia Tech. They bring in linebacker Caden Bailey from Syracuse, quarterback Noah Kim from Coastal Carolina, formerly from Michigan State, running back James Jointer Jr. from Liberty, wide receiver Petey Tucker from Georgia State, linebacker Marco Patierno from Elon, running back Tevier Dunlop from Michigan, quarterback Cameron Edge from Maryland, tight end Tanner Lamaster from Kentucky. They do lose quarterback Cole Snyder out of eligibility. The same with running back Delbert Mims III. It's really all they lose on offense in terms of guys out of eligibility. Defensive, they lose defensive end Joey Zielinski's transferring. Jonkum is transferring. They also lose linebacker JT Killen, who is out of eligibility. So they lose two of their starting linebackers and probably their best defensive lineman, either out of eligibility or to the portal. They bring in a lot of pieces on offense. I don't know. Noah Kim never impressed me at Michigan State. Did impress me at Coastal Carolina. I don't know if I'm Chris Creighton, if I'm super confident in the abilities of Noah Kim to save my job. But that's kind of where I think that they're headed, right? Bring in some pieces, but I don't know that talent-wise that they'll be losing Orange Singleton. I think is huge. He came on really strong for them a year ago at wide receiver. I don't know that they have anybody that's going to be able to replace him, and I don't see Noah Kim leading them to the promised land and competing for a MAC title and possibly saving Creighton's job. I kind of see more of the same, maybe not even not as good as they were a year ago.
I don't have much to add there. Let's move over to Kent State Golden Flashes. 0-12 last season. We started from the bottom, now we here. It can only go up, right? Coaching changes, there were none. Kenny Burns comes back as the head coach for his third season. OC's Mark Carney and Clay Patterson come back for their second season, and Cody Morgan comes back for his second season as defensive coordinator.
Yeah, man. This one, I'm baffled that Kenny Burns is still the head coach at Kent State. The only thing I can come to is that they must be in a bad way financially, and they couldn't afford to get rid of him. Because man, they've been bad for 2 years now. Like you said, didn't win a game a year ago, and I had to look at their schedule to see if they play an FCS team, but they might not win a game again in 2025. Personnel wise, they lose running back Kai Thomas, edge Cameron Olds is off to Kentucky, offensive tackle Jimto Obidegwu off to North Texas. Wide receiver Krishan McCray off to Michigan State. They do bring in running back Jordan Newman coming over from Minnesota, and quarterback CJ Montez coming from Fordham. They also lose wide receiver Luke Floria out of eligibility. So their top two receivers from a year ago are gone. Top running back, and Kai Thomas gone. And a team that just wasn't good. And they didn't get better talent-wise. They got worse. So, I'm not hopeful for much improvement. I don't have any hope for improvement at all for Kent State in 2025. As I mentioned,
if you play college fantasy football, start your running backs, I guess, and if you play in defense, whatever defense is going
start the defense going against them. Like I said, they lose their top edge rusher and Cam Olds. They lose a linebacker and Matt Harmon out of eligibility. Yeah, the talent gets worse. The coaches remain the same. It looks like a potential another winless season for the Golden Flashes, and I don't see how Coach Burns survives that one. I don't know how he survived this year. I don't see him surviving 2 winless seasons in a row.
Well, I don't think he's going to survive much more in this segment. As we go on to the Miami, Ohio Redhawks, they were 9-5 last season. Coaching changes. Again, we got none. Head coach Chuck Martin comes back for his 12th season. Offensive coordinator Pat Walsh comes back for his 3rd season. And defensive coordinator Bill Breakin comes back for his 4th season.
Personnel-wise, they lose quarterback Maddox Kopp to Houston Christian, cornerback Rayon Strader to Auburn, wide receiver Javon Tracy to Minnesota, wide receiver Reggie Virgil to Texas Tech. They bring in wide receiver Deion Colsey from Notre Dame, wide receiver Brady Simmons from Indiana, wide receiver Keith Reynolds from Washington, wide receiver Darian Williamson from Florida State, tight end Brady Kozin from Indiana, quarterback and former MAC Offensive Player of the Year DeQuan Finn comes back to the MAC over from Baylor. Offensive lineman Austin Uke, Stanford, safety Coy Beasley from Purdue, wide receiver Cordell Russell, former I think 4-star recruit for I think TCU it was, comes over from Colorado. Tight end Grant Leaper coming from Iowa. This team loses some talent. I know they lose in addition to the transfer portal. They also lose Brett Gabbert, who is, I think it's finally out of eligibility. Seems like he was there forever. The same I think with Keon Mosey and Cade McDonald. Mosey a running back. Cade McDonald was a receiver. So they lose all 3. Starting receivers. Tight end Jack Cold Iron is also out of eligibility. Defensive, they lose Brian Ugwu, their edge rusher, out of eligibility, and linebacker Matthew Salopic also out of eligibility. Those are going to be 2 big losses for him. I think they've restocked the offense. That's going to have them, with DeQuan Finn, they're going to be one of the top teams in the MAC competing for a MAC title. I don't know that last year with the defense we saw like they played really, really bad in the beginning of the year. They got things together and then they kind of fell apart again at the end. I think this team is the defense is going to be more towards the not as good defense as we saw a year ago. Losing both Salopek and Ugwu. Those are 2 big losses for them. They do return Ty Wise, which will help, but I don't know that this defense is going to be one of the top defenses in the MAC. I think the offense will be, and then they probably look to get into quite a few shootouts and use DeQuan Finn, both his legs and his arm. I think this is a top 4 team in the MAC. I don't right off the top of my head, I don't know where I'd put them. I'd probably would put them somewhere 2 or 3. For me, I think number 1 for me is Ohio. And then 2 and 3 I'd probably put Buffalo 2, Miami 3, and Toledo 4. So yeah, probably put them at 3. But the return of DeQuan Finn to the MAC will be interesting. See how that works out for him. Baylor didn't work out for him so well, but he comes back home to the MAC where he was, I believe he was the Offensive Player of the Year in 2023 for Toledo. So yeah, Miami kind of reloads.
And when you listen to us or listen to Justice about who's coming, you can really see, who's maybe got a little bit of money or whatnot when you're looking at who's coming in here. When you're looking at Miami of Ohio, it's Notre Dame, Indiana, Washington, Indiana, Purdue, Iowa, Colorado. Cordell Russell, talk about a blast from the past. Great upside guy, freshman wide receiver. I think he went to TCU out of high school, then didn't really materialize. I think broke his collarbone or something, then goes to Colorado and then didn't do anything, and then now is over here. So he's well traveled, but he's an exciting. Like he could do some damage here in the MAC, if he's able to stay healthy. But
tight end Grant Leaper too. He was someone I was excited about at Iowa, so excited to see what he can do in the MAC.
So
offensively, they definitely reloaded. Defense probably more of a question mark than it was a year ago.
Well, let's move over to the Northern Illinois Huskies. Coaching changes. We have none again. Head coach Thomas Hammock comes back for his 7th season. Offensive coordinator Wesley Bishorner comes back for his 2nd season. And then defensive coordinator Nick Benedito comes back for his 4th season and 2nd as a co-DC. So this will be his 2nd season as solo. So again, 4th seasons, 2 as a co-DC. This will be his 2nd season as a solo DC.
Player-wise, they lose wide receiver Trevon Rudolph over to Toledo, wide receiver Cam Thompson to Mississippi State, edge Rasheed Thomas to Mississippi State, quarterback Ethan Hampton to Illinois, safety Santana Banner to Missouri, cornerback Amarian Knighton to Indiana, defensive tackle Skylar Gill Howard to Texas Tech, edge Nevaeh Sanders to Mississippi State, and linebacker Christian Furman is out of eligibility.
Friend of the podcast.
They bring in, he got caught up in the JUCO stuff. Like he was a JUCO player, but he got a COVID year, so he didn't get the JUCO year. They bring in through the portal cornerback Miles Thompson from Texas Tech and wide receiver Thomas McCoy coming over from Marshall. And Ontario Brown out of eligibility. So soon we might see him over in the NFL. They return Telly Johnson Jr., exciting freshman a year ago. He'll still be a freshman, but he'll be a redshirt freshman, in 2025. Defensive wise, as I mentioned, they lost Thomas and Skylar Gill Howard along that defensive line to transfer. They also lose defensive tackle Devontae O'Malley, who's out of eligibility. Like to see him get a shot in the NFL as well. That's where I think that's going to be crucial to this team. Is their defensive line a year ago was pretty stout, and they lose all those guys, and so
they're in that havoc rate, and that, like both of them.
They had both Devontae O'Malley and Skylar Gill Howard were some of the top defensive tackles in all of college football in terms of havoc rate. Losing those two guys is gonna hurt quite a bit. Furman was their middle linebacker, but they do return Jaden Dolphin. I think the defensive line is going to hurt. They also lose safety Nate Valcarreal and cornerback Sean Prophet. I think that's going to hurt too. This defense is just not going to be as strong as it was a year ago. And the MO with this team is run the ball, play good defense, right? And I don't know. I think they're going to be able to run the ball, right, with Telly Johnson Jr. But I don't know that the defense is going to be 70%, 60% of what it was a year ago. I think they're going to have to.
They beat Notre Dame.
They did beat Notre Dame. It shows how they were legit. Defensively they were pretty legit last year. I don't see that in their future in 2025. I think they'll be doing so. I think they'll stay bowl eligible, but I don't think they'll be a real threat in the MAC because that defense is just not going to be able to hold people down as they did in 2024.
And I don't believe I mentioned it before, but Northern Illinois in 2024, 8-5. Well, let's now move over to the team that I think is the favorites for the MAC. I think you too as well, Justice. Ohio Bobcats, 11-3 in 2024. Coaching changes. We've got a new head coach and a new OC. Head coach Brian Smith will be in his first season. He's been with the program since 2022 as he served many roles: passing game coordinator, running back coach, assistant head coach. He was the OC last season. 2020, he was at Washington State. And in 2016 through 2029, he was the OC and had several other positions while at Hawaii. Offensive coordinator Scott Ishfording, also known as Coach Izzy, is in his second stint with the team. He was the OC in 2021 through 2023 before Brian Smith took over as the OC. So this is now his fourth season as an OC, but kind of interesting that Brian Smith comes in to be the OC, then he becomes the head coach, and then he brings in the guy that he took the job from, saying, hey, I need you as the OC for Coach Izzy. And then DC, John Hauser, is coming back for his second season.
They don't, despite losing their head coach, they don't lose a lot of players in the portal, but they do lose safety Austin Brawley off to New Mexico, defensive end Bradley Weaver to Rutgers, running back Ricky Hunt Jr. to Tulsa, offensive tackle Jacob Dennison to Wake Forest, and kicker Gianni Spektic over to Memphis. They bring in edge Evan Herman from Vanderbilt, safety Ricky Hyatt Jr. from South Alabama, and they bring back Cy Bangura. Cy Bangura comes over from Minnesota. He was at Ohio in 2023, was their leading rusher, transferred over to Minnesota to be the backup to Darius Taylor. Guess he got his money and decided he wanted to come back to Ohio and actually play some football for a change. So they bring him back here for the 2025 season. In terms of players out of eligibility, looks like only Coleman Owen, wide receiver Coleman Owen, is out of eligibility. The leading receiver from a year ago, but they do return Parker Navarro. He's probably a preseason MAC Player of the Year, I would assume. Bringing in Cy Bangura, look for him to lead the running back room. The question will be kind of who might step up among those receivers in the absence of Coleman Owen. Defensively, the loss of Weaver is pretty big. He was one of their top edge rushers. He was one of the top guys in Havoc and all of G5. So they'll have to replace him. But they do bring back Shea Taylor, linebacker, who he plays middle linebacker, but he's also they also will blitz him a lot too. He's one of their productive pass rushers. Austin Brawley, I mean, I don't know if that's going to hurt as much as I thought it would. He was injured much of last season. I think he played like the first 4 games or so, got injured, came back for like the last 1 or 2 games. So I don't know that loss is going to hurt them. Probably the Bradley Weaver loss up front is probably the biggest loss for them. But man, I think this team returns a ton of talent, and they were hitting on all cylinders, towards the end of last year under Brian Smith, and I just look for that to continue here in 2025. And they're definitely my favorites to win the MAC, and I think Parker Navarro is my favorite to win MAC Offensive Player of the Year.
Couldn't agree more. I want to point this out in the chat. Sal in here, he says, "Hi guys, thank you so much for putting this all together. I really appreciate it. We appreciate you, Sal. Ferris, I see you in there too. If there's something you want to hear, let us know. We're talking all things MAC. Let's keep it going. We've got Toledo Rockets 8-5 in 2024. Coaching changes. Again, we don't have any. Head coach Jason Candle comes back for his 10th season. Offensive coordinator Mike Hallett and Robert Wiener comes back for their 6 seasons together. Defensive coordinator Vince Karras and Ross Watson both come back for their 6 seasons. So again, co-offensive coordinators and co-defensive coordinators all coming back together. Toledo stick the crew's back again. Who's players leaving and coming here, Justice?
Transfer portal wise, they lose defensive lineman Zach Potter to Wyoming. They bring in wide receiver Trayvon Rudolph from Northern Illinois, tight end Jacob Peterson from Holy Cross, edge Avery Dunn from Michigan State, cornerback Andrew Wilson Lamp from East Carolina, offensive tackle Jonathan Harder from Cincinnati, edge Luce Julian from UMass, running back Kenji Christian from North Carolina A&T, running back Chip Trayanum from Kentucky, safety Braden Moore from Wisconsin, and cornerback Amari Snowden comes over from Wisconsin as well. But they do lose some players out of eligibility. Running back Jacquez Stewart is out of eligibility. Wide receiver Jerwan Newton is out of eligibility. The same with tight end Anthony Torres, also out of eligibility. Defensive wise, I know they lose defensive tackle Darius Alexander, who is off the NFL and did get a combine invite. In addition to him, they also lose cornerback Jadarius Perkins and safety Maxon Hook, who's also got a combine invite. Toledo's just one of those teams that kind of reloads, right?
You can see it here again, just like Miami of Ohio. You got Kentucky, Wisconsin, Cincinnati, Michigan State. You've got some guys coming in.
The hardest piece to them to replace is going to be Darius Alexander on that defensive line. He was a talent. Expect him to be drafted here come April, and I don't know that they have anyone that will replace him. That's probably the biggest loss, in my opinion, on this team is Darius Alexander. Tucker Gleason returns. I think he's okay quarterback. I think he's adequate. I don't know that Tucker Gleason is going to lead them to the promised land of a MAC championship. I think he'll lead them to be competitive and possibly competing for a MAC title. I don't know that he's the quarterback that will actually get him there.
I think, sitting about 4th there in the MAC is kind of where I anticipate them finishing. Well, let's move over to the UMass Minutemen. Wait, what did I just say? UMass in the MAC? That's right. UMass makes their inaugural stay here in the MAC, or comes back to the MAC. They were 2-10 last season. Coaching changes. We've got a new head coach, a new OC, and a new DC. Not only to get to know you, but they are all going to be in their first season. We've got head coach Joe Harasimiak in his first season, comes via Rutgers, where he was the DC in 2022 and 2023, and the DC and linebackers coach in 2024. He was Maine's head coach from 2016 to 2018. OC-wise, we've got Mike Bajikin in his first season, Northwestern's OC and quarterback coach in 2020 through 2023, and Utah's interim OC and QB coach in 2024. And then Jared Kite in his first season as DC spent 2023 and 2024 with Harasimiak at Rutgers as the Nichols coach. He also was with coach while at Maine in 2016 through 2022. Man, that is going to be a tough head coaching name for me to get down. Harasimiak. There we go.
Yeah, I mean, like Luke said, UMass returns to the MAC in all sports. Previously, they were, I think, a football-only member. Now they will be an all-sports member starting July 1st of 2025. Players-wise, they lose quarterback Ahmad Haston off to Tennessee Tech, running back Jalen John to Coastal Carolina, defensive lineman Eric Beckwith to Temple, wide receiver Anthony Simpson to Michigan, edge Luce Julian to Toledo, edge Kofi Asare to Florida. They bring in wide receiver Jake McConaughey from Pittsburgh, defensive lineman Timothy Passmore Jr. from Connecticut, quarterback Brandon Rose from Utah, edge Nick Hawthorne from Boise State, safety D.D. Snyder from Ball State, quarterback Grant Jordan from Yale, running back Rocco Griffin from UTSA, linebacker Dean Schaefer from Yale, cornerback Malcolm Green from Virginia, tight end Reese Adkins from Central Florida, and tight end Alex Garachi from Dartmouth. They also lose some players out of eligibility. Wide receivers Jacoby Keeney James and Sterling Galvin are out of eligibility, as is tight end Dominic Mazzotti, and a couple of offensive linemen and left tackle Braden Rome and right tackle Luke Penton. Defensive wise, if I can get my left hand working on this mouse a little bit, and trying to work a right-handed mouse with your left hand is not the easiest thing in the world. Looks like they only lose defensive lineman Tim Randall out of eligibility, and cornerback Lake Ellis also out of eligibility. It'd be an interesting move their first year in the MAC, right? I mean, I don't think they're the worst team, but I don't expect them to be one of the top teams either.
I'm expecting more than 2 wins this season. I'm going to say like 4. I'm not going to be surprised with 4.
Yeah.
I really like the addition of Rocco Griffin there from UTSA. Sal mentions here on X, when I look at the MAC as far as fantasy goes, it seems like scoring has been going down since 2022. Offenses just aren't scoring like they used to.
I think it's quarterback play. I think they've had poor quarter. Half the conference has poor quarterback play, and that doesn't bode well for scoring.
I think that'll be something similar to this season. Yeah. So
yeah, it'd be interesting. I think, like I said, I agree with you. I think UMass will get to 4 wins. They're not going to be the worst team in the MAC, but they're not going to be one of the better teams in the MAC. Be interesting to kind of see what they can do long term. I know we're talking about football, basketball. I expect it to be the cream of the crop for the MAC. But it'll be interesting to see if they can get this football program to be competitive in the MAC, in 2025 and beyond.
All right. Well, let's move over to Western Michigan Broncos, 6-7 in 2024. Coaching changes. We just have a new defensive coordinator. Chris O'Leary will be his first season. He spent 2024 as a safeties coach for the Chargers. Prior to that, he was at Notre Dame for 6 seasons. Different things as a defensive analyst, a defensive grad assistant, DB safety coach. Offensive coordinator Walt Bell comes back for his 2nd season. I know we kind of had questions about Walt Bell going into last season in that tempo. And then head coach Lance Taylor back for his 3rd season.
Player-wise, they lose promising freshman quarterback J.D. Davis II off to Alabama A&M, running back Jaden Nixon off to Central Florida, and edge Corey Walker to Wisconsin. They bring in wide receiver Talik Williams from Georgia State, wide receiver Balin Brooks from San Diego State, running back Cole Cabana from Michigan, tight end Cade Conley from Marshall, offensive tackle Zach Vaughn from Wake Forest, offensive line Raheem Anderson from Michigan, and wide receiver Christian Leary coming over from Georgia Tech.
Those are some interesting names.
They are some interesting names. But what I don't know is who the heck's going to play quarterback for him. J.D. Davis is gone. Hayden Wolf is out of eligibility. I yeah, I don't like. They didn't address quarterback in the portal. So I'm like, I don't know. Maybe is Brock Lowry going to be the quarterback? I don't. That doesn't excite me, right? I mean, it seems like they have some pieces on offense, but they're missing the biggest piece, and that's quarterback. And so, man, like I can't get too excited about them because of the quarterback situation.
I mean, I just vision like Christian Leary being a lot of bubble screens and jet sweeps, and really just trying to get him the ball in space. If you're not familiar with Christian Leary, he was, I don't know if he was a 5-star out of Alabama or
He's a high 4-star.
and then goes to Georgia Tech, and then makes his way to Kalamazoo. If you happen to ever go to Kalamazoo, I suggest the Sweetwater Donuts right there by Waldo Stadium. Also, the Waldo's Bar. Not pretty good wings there, right across from the stadium.
Yeah, this is I don't have a lot of faith in their success this year because of the quarterback play. Like, I'm absolutely like stunned that they did not do anything to address quarterback situation and the first transfer portal. Now maybe they'll look to do something here in the spring portal, but I don't know. That just seems like a bad plan. Like, to try to bring someone in starting in August and they're going to be your starting quarterback. Maybe it'll work out for them. I don't know, but
it's a bold strategy, Cotton.
I mean, like they brought in a lot of other pieces, and then like I said, it just doesn't make sense to me. They seem to ignore the biggest piece on offense at quarterback.
Well, let's move over to the last team.
It's not in the MAC. They're not in the MAC.
MAC.
We had to put them somewhere, and it just seemed right to kind of throw them together with the MAC. We're not doing an independent podcast. So,
UConn Huskies 9-4 in 2024. Coaching changes? None. Head coach Jim Mora comes back for his 4th season. Offense coordinator Goran Samus comes back for his 2nd season, and DC Matt Brock comes back for his 2nd season.
Personnel-wise, they lose defensive lineman Timothy Passmore Jr. to UMass, defensive lineman Price Yates to North Carolina, edge Langston Hardy to Wake Forest, quarterback Malcolm Bell to Michigan State, linebacker Julian Simon is in the portal, running back Darrell Robinson to Auburn. They bring in safety Tyrese Mills from Penn State, offensive tackle Ty Chan from Notre Dame, edge Trent Jones II from Iowa State, safety Kobe Albert from Mississippi State, linebacker Taekwon King from Temple, defensive lineman Ben Smiley III from Virginia, wide receiver Caleb Burton from Auburn, tight end Juice Farine from NC State, wide receiver Raymello Murphy from Arizona, linebacker Brian Parham from Washington, linebacker Terry Kirksey Jr. from Washington State, running back MJ Flowers from Eastern Illinois, defensive lineman Vincent Jackson, Nebraska, edge Stephon Wright from Texas Southern, and safety Komoya Latu from Wisconsin. And they don't lose really anybody of significance. I feel like they don't lose anybody of significance from an out of eligibility standpoint. Quarterback Joe Fangano returns. Quarterback Nick Evers returns. They had a pretty successful season a year ago.
I really like the addition of Taekwon King, linebacker coming in, Juice Farine coming in. Really like those additions there.
Yeah, they made some nice additions. I think they can make some noise like they did a year ago. They beat North Carolina, and was it the Wasabi Bowl, I think. They beat them pretty soundly. Now North Carolina didn't have a quarterback. So that certainly helps things. But UConn played well a year ago. Almost got double-digit wins.
Losing Price Yates to North Carolina, I think, is a big hit.
That probably is their biggest loss. And that was a weird situation because he entered the portal before they went to the bowl game, and then he announced, "No, I'm back. I'm returning to UConn." And then he goes and plays in the bowl game, has a phenomenal bowl game against North Carolina, and then announces he's entering the portal and going to North Carolina. So I don't know. It's kind of an odd situation. But yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's probably the biggest loss.
If you're going to be in the portal, you can't play. So it's like, okay, I'm coming back. I'm just hoping I don't get hurt.
Yeah, it's definitely their biggest loss. But I agree with you. I like some of the additions on offense. They have talented running backs there. Bringing in Juice Farine, I think it would be interesting. They had Justin Jolie was there 2023, so they know how to use the tight end, especially with Joe Fangano returning. I think that bodes well for the passing game. So yeah, I think 8-9 wins once again for UConn.
All right, let's go through their schedule. They've got CCSU Blue Devils. I'll go with a win there. Yeah. At Syracuse, at Delaware, at home against Ball State, at Buffalo, at home versus FIU, off week, at Boston College, at Rice, at home against UAB, at home against Duke, at home against Air Force, and then on the road at Florida Atlantic.
I think they're four losses for sure, maybe 5.
What losses are you seeing here?
Syracuse, Boston College, Duke. Trying to remember who else you said. Those are 3, right?
Buffalo, Air Force.
Buffalo and Air Force would be the other. If they have 5 losses, would be the other 2.
It'll be a tough season, but I like what they're putting together.
Yeah, you're right, Sal. They do. UConn is definitely a running back by committee. It's kind of a different one each week. They have a lot of talented guys, but they have a rotation of 2 or 3 guys that are really, really good, and each week it's a different guy that kind of pops off. And I don't expect that to change here in 2025. But like Luke and I both said, the one guy I am potentially excited about is tight end Juice Farine coming over from NC State. He was a talented freshman. Interested to see what he can do in UConn. I think he will be a featured player in this offense.
All right. That's going to do it for us tonight. Come back and join us next week as we continue to bring you up to date on all the latest news and happenings in the world of G5 college football. We will be back live with you all March 3rd, right around 10:30 p.m. Eastern, as we discuss the transfer portal and coaching changes in the Mountain West Conference. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. On X, give us a follow. And if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please subscribe and leave those 5-star ratings and reviews. Thank you all for your support. Until the next time, we are the G5 Hive.